Welcome to my channel, Journey to Education. Make sure you subscribe and follow for more. Today, we're diving straight into a comprehensive explainer of Class 12 Biology, Chapter 4. We're talking all about reproductive health. We're going to unpack the actual science, the massive societal impacts, and the specific medical interventions that define how we handle reproduction today. Let's get right to it. Okay, so here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with reproductive health and population, then move into understanding contraceptive methods, cover IUDs and oral pills, dig into MTP and amniocentesis, and finally wrap up with managing STIs and infertility. All right, Section 1, Reproductive Health and Population Dynamics. To lay down the foundation here, we have to look at the World Health Organization. They define reproductive health as a total well-being in all aspects of reproduction, right? So what does that actually mean? Well, it's a huge distinction. It means being reproductively healthy isn't just about having functioning organs or, normal hormones and regular cycles. It's the whole shebang. It is a complete state that includes your emotional well-being, behavioral interactions, and actually having a supportive social environment. But how does this ideal, perfect state of health collide with reality? It really comes down to a demographic balance equation. Look, the population explosion we hear about all the time, at its core, it's just a simple mathematical imbalance. Better healthcare facilities caused a rapid, super sharp decline in mortality rates, specifically the maternal mortality rate, or MMR, and the infant mortality rate, the IMR. So way more individuals are surviving to reproductive age. But, and here's the kicker, the other side of the equation, the birth rate, well, that stayed super high. And this was due to social factors, things like early marriage, low literacy, and honestly just a lack of awareness about family planning.
Moving on to Section 2, Contraceptive Methods and Understanding Options.
To really make sense of all the tools we have available to balance that equation, I want you to think of contraception like this giant master tree with distinct branches. You've got natural or traditional methods, barrier methods, IUDs, oral pills, injectables and implants, and finally, surgical methods. Having this master tree mental model is a real game changer because it allows you to easily categorize literally any specific method we talk about. So let's contrast those first two branches. Natural methods are all about timing. They rely totally on the principle of timing to avoid the sperm and the ovum ever meeting up. This includes periodic abstinence, withdrawal, and lactational amenorrhea. That last one is actually fascinating. It's the natural absence of menstruation due to intense milk feeding right after childbirth. Now, barrier methods, on the other hand, think of them as the physical bodyguards against conception. We're talking male condoms and female devices like diaphragms, cervical caps, and vaults. And keep in mind, these physical barriers are often combined with spermicidal creams or foams to really ramp up their efficiency. Way on the other end of the spectrum, we have the surgical methods. For females, this is called a tubectomy, where a small part of the fallopian tube is basically cut and tied. For males, it's a vasectomy involving the vas deferens. Now, while these surgical sterilizations offer a near 100% success rate, they are absolutely considered terminal methods. Why? Because their reversibility is incredibly poor. Once it's done, it's pretty much done. Okay, Section 3, IUDs and oral pills. These are definitely some of the most widely accepted methods. Let's break down the three families of intrauterine devices, or IUDs, using a really clever little mnemonic, NCH. N stands for non-medicated devices, like the lips loop, and they work by increasing phagocytosis, which is basically the cellular consumption of sperm. C is for copper-releasing IUDs, like CUT or Multilode 375. Here, copper ions actively suppress sperm motility and their fertilizing capacity. And finally, H is for hormone-releasing IUDs, like Progestacert and LNG20. These add an extra trick by making the uterus entirely unsuitable for implantation and making the cervix super hostile to sperm. Next up, we have oral contraceptive pills. These contain small doses of progestogens or a combination of progestogen and estrogen, and they require a very precise physiological schedule. You start within the first 5 days of the menstrual cycle, take them daily for exactly 21 days, take a 7-day gap where menstruation happens, and then you just repeat the cycle. It is basically a brilliant way to medicalize and control the body's natural cycle. On to Section 4, MTP and amniocentesis. Let's look at the legal and medical rules. This actually brings us to a highly critical question in reproductive health. When is medical termination of pregnancy, or MTP, legally permitted?
MTP, which is also known as induced abortion, was legalized in India way back in 1971. But as you can imagine, this legalization came with some very specific, strict regulations to prevent misuse.
The NCRT outlines very distinct legal grounds for MTP. It's permitted when the continuation of the pregnancy involves a risk to the life or grave injury to the physical or mental health of the pregnant woman. It's also allowed if there is a substantial risk that the child will be born with serious physical or mental abnormalities. And furthermore, it covers unwanted pregnancies that happen from contraceptive failure, unprotected intercourse, or tragic cases of rape. From a medical standpoint, these induced abortions are considered relatively safe only up to 12 weeks, meaning just that first trimester of pregnancy. Now, another really crucial medical procedure during pregnancy is amniocentesis. This is the sampling of amniotic fluid to test fetal cells. Its legitimate actual medical purpose is to screen for severe genetic disorders. But because this fluid also contains chromosomal data about the sex of the fetus, amniocentesis carries a strict statutory ban against sex determination. This legal intervention is absolutely vital to combat the tragic illegal practice of female foeticide.
All right, Section 5, STIs and infertility. Let's talk about managing complications.
A massive part of reproductive health counseling revolves around infertility. This is defined pretty directly as the inability of a couple to produce children despite unprotected sexual coitus. And it is so important to point out here that sexually transmitted infections, or STIs, along with reproductive tract infections, are major, critical hurdles that can severely damage a person's reproductive health and directly contribute to this infertility. But to overcome these hurdles, science offers ART, or assisted reproductive technology. I know it looks like alphabet soup, but mastering these acronyms is an absolute must for your exams. First, we have in vitro fertilization, or IVF. This can lead into transfers like zygote intrafallopian transfer, ZIFT, or intrauterine transfer, IUT. Now, if a female cannot produce an ovum herself, but can provide a suitable environment, we use gamete intrafallopian transfer, or GIFT. And for direct microscopic cellular intervention, there's intracytoplasmic sperm injection, ICSI. Each of these acronyms is just a highly specialized way that science steps in to overcome biological reproductive barriers.
So, bringing it all together, reproductive health isn't just some abstract chapter in a biology textbook. It is the ultimate balance between our biology, our social awareness, and our personal choices. When we educate ourselves on everything from contraceptive tools to advanced medical technologies, we aren't just shaping our own personal well-being. We're actually dictating the demographic future and the overall health of our entire society. So I'll leave you with this. Does our individual mastery over reproductive science hold the absolute key to our collective future? Thank you so much for joining this explainer today, and keep asking questions.